I was working with a large number of scientists who were, they were working on how you clean up contaminated sites. So you might have an old petrol refinery, or you might have a chemical plant, or even an old dry cleaning agency, or a fuel station or something like that. And the chemicals had leached into the soil, and how do you clean up that mess? And there's a thing called the Superfund in the United States where people do attempt to clean up these things. But talking to these scientists and attending their international conferences, and then talking to Indian scientists and Chinese scientists and Swiss scientists and German scientists, it came to me that this is a worldwide problem, and we're attempting to solve these little local scale disasters, which are mere pixels in this much, much bigger picture. So it was just borne in on me over the years that I worked with these scientists that this was much larger, more. You can't just put a chain link fence around a polluted site and keep the pollution in there. It gets out. It gets out on the water, the wind, and the soil, and so on. And so it travels around the planet. So we are now talking about a worldwide problem, bigger than climate change, and in the end, more insidious. It's certainly killing 10 times more people than climate change at the moment. That may not always be the case. But at the moment, chemical poisoning is killing 10 times the number of people that climate disasters are killing. By the middle of the century, climate disasters may have caught up. But at the moment, this is the most deadly thing that humans have ever done to one another.
Thank you for that, Julian. Thank you. So now we have questions coming in. So, okay, first question is Kaylee. Kaylee, what is your question?
Hello. Please, can you tell me, is part of the World Health Organization, as formally as part of the United Nations, addressing this? Have they taken it out, or has UNICEF adopted, have these different arms of the United Nations taken this on to address it? And is there a way for the Secretary General of the United Nations to involve and along with having a group of scientists who will look after this, to whom the different countries will be responsible for doing, for creating a program that people such as you would monitor and create? Has this been brought up?
Not so far as I know. I mean, the UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme, does quite a lot of work in this area. And of course, the World Health Organization is monitoring what is going on with human health. But nobody has yet put together the big picture. That's really why I wrote the book, because everybody's looking at the individual pixels or the individual pieces of this jigsaw puzzle. Nobody is looking at the big picture. So the whole purpose of writing the book was to draw international policy attention and international scientific attention to a very big problem for humanity that needs to be addressed with all the urgency, with more urgency, in fact, because of the death toll, even than climate change. Now, with climate change, what you have is the IPCC, an intergovernmental organization. It's a government organization, not a scientific organization, but it brings together the best science on Earth to study the climate problem. And that has dramatically improved our understanding of the climate problem. We need a chemical, IPCC, basically, to understand what is the effect of the mass release of 220 billion tons of chemicals every year, cumulative, year after year after year after year. Every 5 years, 1 trillion tons of chemicals are unleashed by human activity. And they don't go away. They mix and they intermingle and they release daughter products. And there is nobody studying that. Nobody in science that I know of. I mean, in science, they're barely up to counting the number of man-made chemicals. And they're only just starting out studying the mixtures problem. So we need a huge worldwide effort to comprehend what is going on here as a matter of urgency. And as I say, the death toll alone justifies it. It's the most deadly thing that humans have ever done to one another, is to unleash these. So at the moment, it's not being recognized, but the UN World Health Organization is keeping tabs on it. They are telling us what the death toll is. They're watching how many people die of air pollution, how many people die of different cancers, how many people die of different other related diseases. They're studying with alarm the worldwide increase in mental diseases, in depression, in suicide, and in autism and ADHD, and all of these childhood mental diseases that are now sort of starting to manifest themselves that weren't there when I was a child growing up, or if they were there at very, very low levels in the population. These things have flowered dramatically in the last 30 or 40 years, and that has been the time of maximum human chemical output. So, basically there's a smoke and fire issue here. We can see the smoke. When are we going to get to addressing the fire?
Could the press, international press, be given these books, your books, and for a massive international review of the book and brought up that way? I know my sister's a journalist in Italy, in Rome, where there is an international press association, La Stampa Estera, and they would be like one group. But what about in the United States? I don't know. Is there an international press group? Could your book be given to the reviewers of the most important and publicized newspapers to read and review, and attention brought that way?
I have to say that, the book has been distributed by my publisher, Cambridge University Press. It's been offered to leading media in the United States. I have to say they're not interested. America is a totally chemicalized society. You've got to realize that it's run by the chemistry industry. Almost everything Americans do or touch contains chemicals, and, it's not in the interests of that big industry for there to be too much public exposure of these issues. And the media are sheep. Look, I say this with a great deal of shame and sorrow, because I've been a journalist since the early 1970s. I've been a newspaper editor for years, but my profession has gone down the tubes. They are not interested. They are not trained. Even among journalists, there are very, very few journalists actually qualified to report on science or who know anything about science. They know a lot about economics, so-called, and they know a lot about politics. They know heaps about entertainment. The media is not really about information. It's about entertainment, which is why you've got, Fox News and Co. making so much money from publishing garbage. So, basically, the media is in a bad way, and democracy and the Western world in particular are being betrayed by that, because the media does not provide people with the information they need to have when they go to vote for their next government, unfortunately. Or they're looking very, very short term. They're not looking at the long term. But personally, I find it horrifying that we can be committing an act of mass manslaughter on the scale, twice the scale of World War II, and nobody notices. What is wrong with us?
I wonder if your book were wrapped in a bright red cover upon which was written, "You are being poisoned," and that book was distributed amongst Costco and BJ's and all the discount places where people go shopping, and the same kind of stores in different countries, if that wouldn't catch people's attention.
Well, I think, yeah, sure, it would be great. As I say, my book is probably written more for the policymakers, the thinkers, the people who really want to clean up their act, the people who are, it's written for concerned grandparents such as myself, who are worried what kind of a toxic world we are handing off to our grandchildren. I think the average person is starting to get their information from sources such as the other speakers at this conference, from concerned doctors who are saying, look, I'm seeing this horrible disease, rampaging around the place, and, here's how to fix it. Here's what's causing it, and here's how to fix it. So this knowledge is percolating through society. And I actually put more faith in social media these days, even though there's a lot of garbage on social media. But there's also good stuff on social media, very reliable stuff on social media. So, social media is a source of tremendous hope to me, because people are starting to exchange ideas about how we fix these gigantic problems. And that exchange is taking place worldwide. That's the really nice thing about it. For the first time in the whole of our history as a species on Earth, we are exchanging ideas around the planet. We're starting to think together as a species.
Well, then there is hope.
There is hope.
Maybe in addition on the book, it should be written for all grandparents. I too am one.
It is certainly, all my books are written for thinking grandparents who really now are starting to understand what they have done to the world without appreciating it. You know, what our numbers and our enormous consumptive processes have done to this planet, which are going to make it uninhabitable. Now, we're going to turn it back into what it was 800 million years ago if we are not careful.
Yes.
So you know, but there is time to put the brakes on that process. I'm not saying that we will stop all pain. There will probably be a crash, you know, within the next 10, 20, 30 years. But, you know, we can minimize the damage that does. We can cut the number of deaths and the amount of human suffering that produces.
I hope so. Thank you so much for all your effort and your wisdom and your heart and your mind being united. Thank you so much.